Hello everyone. Welcome to this course on STAR CCM+ organized by LearnCX. This is the first lecture of STAR CCM+. In this lecture we are going to see the fundamentals of installation related to STAR CCM+, how to install the software, how to download the software first, various installation steps, various system requirements, and in the end how to start the software. Outline of this particular lecture. First, we will let you know how to get your training software when you undertake this particular training. Then how to install STAR CCM+ at your end. There will be a demonstration of STAR CCM+ installation. And what are the licensing related information when you install STAR CCM+. STAR CCM+, as you might be aware by now, is a software from CD Arabco. It is a CFD simulation software and all-in-one software for CAD geometry cleanup or generation, meshing, and carrying out CFD simulation. So now first I would like to welcome you to this particular course by LearnCX. This is a course on STAR CCM+, that is learning how to conduct CFD simulation using STAR CCM+. This lecture will provide you step-by-step guidance on how to install STAR CCM+, how to get your software for training and practice related purpose. Now this course provides you the software for training, so you'll be receiving a free copy of the software from our support. So the first thing that you should do is to contact our support email address for getting your STAR CCM+ license or STAR CCM+ software for practice. Once you have completed the registration for the course, contact the software support email address that our training personnel will provide you. So once you get in contact with our training personnel, they will provide you information on how to get the software and what is the email address to which you have to write an email in order to get the free copy of your software for practice purpose, which is part of this training course. You will also get the details of the software key and installation files from the same email address that you write to for getting the software. So the first thing that you should do is contact our support. Now, the system requirements that are necessary in order to use this software. Some system requirements, mostly STAR CCM+ runs on most of the systems that are currently in use. But there are some recommended hardware requirements in order to run STAR CCM+ and its CAD client. So if you use this, the performance will be improved as they have recommended. So in terms of processors, about 2.4 GHz of CPU is required and at least 4 cores per CPU, which is the requirement when you are working on a workstation. If you are working on a laptop, no minimum speed for the CPU. However, it is recommended to have at least 2 cores per CPU. So higher number of cores will allow you running parallel simulations. If you are considering computer memory, 2 GB of RAM per core is necessary, as well as 2 GB of RAM per core in laptops. In terms of disk space, 2.5 GB of free disk space in order to run the simulations. This much space will be required. Similarly, on the laptops, the same minimum hard disk space is required, that is free disk space. And graphics card, if there is a dedicated graphics card, it is going to be a advantage, which has a 3D capability. So you need to have a dedicated graphics card which has 3D capabilities in order to run STAR CCM+. Integrated graphic chipsets are not recommended, although STAR CCM will run on those, but the speed might be a bit of a problem or there might be buffering. So dedicated hardware graphics card is the necessity or is the recommended settings. The memory requirements. If you start running STAR CCM+, what sort of RAM requirements are necessary? Typical memory requirements are recommended for STAR CCM+. So if we take an example, for meshing, in order to generate surface mesh, approximately about 0.5 GB per million surface triangles is the memory that is required. The RAM. If you are running a volume or you are creating volume mesh polyhedral, about 1 GB per million cells is consumed while creating that much amount of cells of volume meshing. And if you are generating volume meshing, that is trimmed cells, approximately 0.5 GB per million cells is consumed. So you will once you get into the details of this course, you will understand what these all means, what is polyhedral mesh, what is trimmed mesh, but these are the system requirements. So if you have about 2 GB of RAM, that is sufficient to get all these things done minimum. So for example, a workstation with 48 GB of RAM can build up to 50 million cells when we just extrapolate this data, which means if you have to generate 50 million cells, you need to have about 48 GB of memory or RAM for polyhedral, and 100 billions of cell in case of trimmed cells. So this is the requirement if you want to generate a 50 million cells. But usually even in general industrial problems and academic problems, we don't generate this much heavy mesh, so it is sufficient to have about 2 GB of RAM on a laptop in order to practice on, in order to get trained for STAR CCM+. Now memory, what is the correlation between memory and mesh? The memory required for solving in serial, let's assume a case, there are some recommended settings that are provided by CDADAPCO which correlate what is the memory required and what is the mesh that you are going to generate. What is the memory required? So the memory requirement for solving in serial with two equation turbulence model, these requirements are displayed below. On an average, polyhedral cells requires roughly twice the amount of memory per million cells compared to the trimmed cells. So let's say a polyhedral cells that you are going to generate, which looks something like this. For those cells in segregated solver, we require 1 GB per million cells. In coupled solver, we require 2 GB per million cells if you are solving, not just generating mesh but solving also. And in coupled implicit, we require about 4 GB per million cells. So for 1 million cell count, if you are solving, if there is a 4 GB RAM, the case will run fairly good. So that is what the approximation is. This is for solving a serial problem with two equation turbulence model. And in case of trimmed cell, segregated solver requires about 0.5 GB per million cells. The coupled solver requires about 1 GB per million cells, whereas the coupled implicit solver requires about 2 GB per million cells. So in crux, what this means is, let's say if you are generating only mesh, it is per million cells if you generate, you require about 2 GB of RAM. And if you are also intending to solve the simulation, that is actually carry out CFD simulations or running the case, you require about 4 GB per million cells in case of polyhedral coupled implicit. So generally what is advised is that the laptop that you are using for training should approximately have about 4 GB in order to run everything comfortably. It does not mean that it is the minimum requirement, but it means that everything will run smoothly if you have about 4 GB of RAM. So this is what the understanding is, or the recommendations is. So you will be able to carry out meshing properly, there won't be buffering, you will be able to also run simulations of about million cells, which is okay from academic or training perspective. This much amount of cell count is okay. You don't exceed cell counts much on a higher side for training. But for large industrial problems in industry, people use huge amount of workstations having 50 for 50 GB RAM, 100 GB RAM, something like that. So that is what the industrial level is set, but for training 4 GB RAM laptop is more than sufficient. Now there are some certified platforms if you consider what sort of operating systems STAR CCM can handle or can run, what sort of chipsets it is recommended or it is tested or certified in order to run. So the certifications comes from CDADAPCO. So STAR CCM has been tested on all these platforms and operating systems. If you consider Linux on an Intel machine or AMD 32-bit machine, and if you consider the operating system as Red Hat Enterprise, then STAR CCM can run in this combination. It can also run on a Linux AMD single and double precision 32-bit machine with a Red Hat update 7. It can also run on Red Hat Enterprise Server 5.3, Red Hat Enterprise Linux Server 5.3, as well as Fedora 14. So this is on all these operating systems it can run, as well as on CentOS it is able to run on a server installation. And when we say Windows 32-bit, it can run on Windows 7 Professional Service Pack 1, and it will run even if you have a 64-bit machine and Windows Vista Service Pack 1. So on all these machines, these are the certified platforms where STAR CCM will run comfortably, will perform or give the performance at a level that has been certified by CDADAPCO. and Windows 7 obviously it will run, so no problem with that. What about the compilers and graphics? What sort of compilers or other installations are needed on the laptop, and what sort of graphics is needed on the laptop? So in terms of compilers, all Linux ports of STAR CCM are built with the GNU 4.6 compiler, and all Windows ports are built with the Intel 12.1 compiler or Visual Studio 2010. So you need these Intel 12.1 compiler and Visual Studio 2010. Mostly all the current settings of laptop have those, so you don't have to worry about that. The compiler and its libraries need not be installed. That's what I'm saying here, that you need not install the compiler separately. They will be either already there on your installation, or STAR CCM installation will take care of all these. Java, STAR CCM Plus and the CAD clients require Java SDK, that is Software Development Kit version 1.6.39. So this is the version that is required for STAR CCM Plus and its CAD client functionalities. So the SDK is included within the STAR CCM Plus installer, so you don't have to install anything new other than just installing STAR CCM Plus. And the SDK is also available from the Java website. If you want to just explore it on your side. And graphics, there is no real minimum need of any graphics card, but the better the graphics, the better the performance, and the necessity is that there should be dedicated graphics card in order to run smoothly. The thing I would like to tell here is that it will run even on lower performance machines, but the performance or the display will have some issues like buffering. They may not be fast. It may hang. So it is better that the recommended settings are followed. But even if you have a lower setting machine or a lower level machine which is not up to the recommended settings of RAM or recommended platform or compilers and graphics card, STAR CCM Plus will be installed. You can see the GUI and you can also run it or get trained on it. But for usual industrial use, you required the recommended settings. Now, that being said, I mean, we have now seen what sort of system requirements are necessary, what are the different settings that are needed. So now what we will do is that we will see how to download the installer that is needed for your training. STAR CCM Plus can be downloaded from the CD Adapco user service site, which is known as Steve portal. In the browser, you have to log into CD Adapco customer service center. There is website here, username and password that will be provided to you by the CD Adapco installation personnel. In the customer service, you have to click on file download. Make sure that the STAR CCM Plus is selected as a product, and you select the appropriate version. So this is where you will download it as shown here. Make sure that you download the latest version as shown here. You go to file download. When you log into that website, you select products STAR CCM Plus here, and you select the latest version, and then depending upon whether your machine is Windows 64, Windows 32 or Linux machine, you select the appropriate download. It is about 1.3 GB download, so that will be done and after that you can install using that installer. When you install STAR CCM Plus, what all gets installed? Several components are installed, that is several software components are installed. There is the STAR CCM Plus basic module, CAD clients if you are using Windows, Java SDK is installed, NPI libraries which are platform dependent are also installed in order to let STAR CCM Plus function properly. FlexNet utilities and utilities and user guide is also installed for licensing related issues. When you get the software, there are several additional directories that will be created mostly in the program file or wherever you install the software. STAR CAD series directory will be created, which will contain subdirectories and which will have the constituent applications of the CAD client. STAR CCM Plus directory will be created, which will have the basic or the main STAR CCM Plus module. If you choose to install FlexLM licensing utilities, then an additional directory will be created for that as well. And on Windows, the directory will be named as FlexLM, and on Linux it will be named as FlexLM_11.9. I recommend using Windows for our training related purpose. If you have selected Java SDK component, the installer will automatically install Java SDK as well. So now that been done, let us see how to run STAR CCM+. After installation, CD adapco folder will be added to the all programs list in the start menu, and you can click on the icon to launch STAR CCM+. This is how the display or the graphic user interface of STAR CCM+ looks like. And there will be a desktop icon also when you create, when you have an option for that. Make sure that you add an exception to third-party firewall software to allow STAR CCM+ client to communicate with its server, because the licensing will be done through internet. So you need internet connection in order to run STAR CCM+. So the summary of this particular lecture, this first lecture, we saw what are the system requirements in order to run STAR CCM+, because you will be getting a training software from our side, which is the STAR CCM+ software for training. And we saw what are the system requirements in order to run the STAR CCM+ training version. We also saw how to download and install and run STAR CCM+ once you have gone through the system requirements. So we will end this particular lecture here. In the next lecture, we will see what is the workflow while running STAR CCM+ software. Make sure that you also view the demonstration of installation, which is along with this lecture, which will be added to your training account. So thank you for viewing this particular lecture. See you in the next lecture.